Welcome to Michigan Reimagined, presented by TA Forsberg and Wagoner Financial. And here's your host, Chris Buck.
So affordable housing is crucial for attracting and retaining a growing workforce, but affordability is declining nationwide, and Michigan is taking action to this challenge. So here to talk about the state's first ever statewide housing plan is a group of fantastic people. I'm really excited to have them mostly in studio, one on the phone, in a two-part series. We've got the president of TA Forsberg, Mr. Brent Forsberg, the chief operating officer for LEAP, the Lansing Economic Area Partnership, Keith Lambert, the secretary-treasurer of the Michigan Laborers District Council, Alex Zurek, and from Richmond Capital, the vice president of investor relations on the phone, Mr. Mike Ibarra. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Thank you. Great to be here.
All right. So we're going to talk about housing. So Brent, why don't you kick us off and talk about putting this panel together? You know, what are we hoping to learn from this longer conversation? Again, a two-part series, so stay tuned for the second installment in the coming episode. What are we going to talk about here today?
So last year, the state of Michigan launched its first statewide ever housing plan, looking at getting more housing for our workforce across the entire state, looking at bringing up our existing stock, because Michigan has a very old housing stock. I think it's right around 1972-ish as far as the average. So putting together plans of how to have local communities be able to use the state tools to address the housing issues at the hyperlocal level. And that's what this panel was put together, because there's some really cool things happening across the state, and then also connecting it with workforce development and also with the businesses that are coming in, of how we can use housing as a tool for recruiting businesses to the state. So I'm excited for this these next shows to talk about this.
Right on. Yeah. And so speaking of that, so Michigan's had a lot of success lately on landing some pretty significant employers that are promising a lot of workforce, right? And then we've also, or if I'm not mistaken, Michigan has the first chief growth officer, the trying to not proactively, unfortunately, it is a bit reactive, but deliberately try to grow Michigan's population. We've been sitting on this 10 million, person population for decades. And the needle needs to move and try to make this an inbound population growth state. And it's hard to do both, right? Attract an employer that's going to have 2,000 employees at a what used to be, an empty vacant lot and into a new factory, and inbound growth population. They need a place to live, right? So all of this is hand in glove.
Absolutely. When you look at the growth of the early 20th century, when Michigan became the manufacturing powerhouse of the world, housing was a key element of that in growing. And this is what we're looking at again. We're seeing the same thing. And as we're onboarding these high-tech manufacturing jobs, and we'll hear from Alex on the Laborers Council of all the things that they have going too, of these types of jobs that are here, that connecting all of this back together is how Michigan's going to win. You know, it's no secret that we are one of the slowest growth states in the last census period from 2010 to 20. So my hope is, as we move through this, that by the time we get to 2030, that we've reversed that and we're one of the fastest growing states, because we have the resources, we have the quality of life, we have the talent for the jobs here in this state, and we have a state that's focused on making sure the housing can get there. So I'm excited for our future. Right
on. So Brent, why don't you kick us off? I want to make sure that everyone listening knows who you are, everyone on this call, and explain your role in this project.
Yeah. So my company is TA Forsberg Incorporated. We're a third-generation company in the greater Lansing area. And we've been focused on housing for quite some time. My grandfather and father started in infrastructure, and then we moved into housing full-time in the 90s. And for me, it's I'm also getting my PhD at the University of Denver. And my focus is how do we tie community growth, community capacity back to creating the opportunities for people, and how Michigan grew in the 20th century, and looking at those tools and doing the research to see how we rebuild this.
Right on. And Keith, talk about your role in this equation.
Yeah, so Keith Lambert, I'm our Chief Operating Officer for the Lansing Economic Area Partnership, and this is why we love Brent. He is, just such a phenomenal resource and kind of brain trust in the network that he brings to bear. But from LEAP standpoint, in the Lansing region that we cover, Ingham, Eaton, Clinton counties, about 500,000 people in the center of the state. To Brent's point, we've just kind of been too static, and we recognize what is inhibiting growth. And what are bottlenecks? And housing is right up there with anything, and enabling the workforce. But literally, we can't grow our population but for having the right housing product. for different stages of life, for different, income strata. And that's a big challenge moving forward, is that we're so affordable in terms of what's out there today, we can't build new. So it's a big challenge to kind of figure that out. And we could potentially lose being much more affordable than the rest of the country if we don't figure this out and bring the right tools to bear. And I think the statewide plan, the plan that we're kind of building as a region, is all coalescing around, like, how do we bring these things to market? How do we get new housing stock in terms of single family homes, multifamily homes, raise up that aging housing stock that still has, beautiful, in small towns and urban areas, beautiful housing stock. We just need reinvestment. How do we trigger that? How do we incentivize that properly? So it's a really exciting challenge to have, because we do have so much job creation happening, and we want to, rather than have a sucking sound and have a lot of talent leave, we want to create that, that foster that right environment for people to be able to graduate and stay here from Michigan State University, from Lansing Community College. So it's kind of the challenge of our times, and it very much is a crisis nationally, but I think it's also a huge opportunity, because Michigan has all the assets, the baseline economic assets, and particularly our region is really strong. There's no ceiling for us. We just have to really change our trajectory, and I think we're starting to do it, and a lot of the right pieces are in place now.
Got it. All right. And Mike, talk about Richmond Capital. What exactly is your role in trying to solve this problem?
Sure, and appreciate the opportunity to be with you all today. So fundamentally, well, first of all, just a bit of background. I've spent about 40 years, and every time I say that, I almost fall over, in the real estate business, in the real estate operation or management business. But most recently, really since the early 2000s, I've spent most of my time thinking about community-based development and the role of housing in that. And it's absolutely fundamental to the success of any community. In fact, what it does is not only create opportunities for people to live, but it spawns, the creation of food systems and child care and education and transportation and healthcare, all the things that really mean a healthy community going forward. What we at Richmond Capital do, we have a broad role as an investment manager of major kind of institutional money, but what we do specific to this effort is we provide construction and permanent financing for affordable and workforce housing that allows local entities to find ways to build and maintain long-term assets in housing without the risk of interest rate movement or without extraordinary costs that sometimes come with this kind of effort. What's most exciting to us about this effort and what's going on in Michigan is over the course of all of our careers, we've found that the best efforts reside locally. So the fact that you've got a locally based effort going on, we as a provider can service that effort and support it, and you'll be far more successful by this being homegrown and involving the resources, both operational and physical, human, et cetera, as well as financial. If those resources stay local and are recycled local, you're going to have a much stronger system. So we're here to service that effort and help provide financing tools for this growth. Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us here. And then wrapping us up, Alex, talk a little bit about the Laborers District Council. How does
sure
that
thing.
work?
So I'm Alex Zurek from the Michigan Laborers District Council. We have about 10,000 members in the state. We cover almost every facet of construction, whether it be road construction, asbestos abatement, buildings going up, concrete, all your infrastructure, whether it be sewer, gas, water. And we, in the past, have not done much in residential, but we see it as an opportunity for growth. One of the big things that we see, especially to Brent's component and Mike's component, is the community. Obviously, we have a lot of people in the community, and I will say this, my kids get tired of me saying, hey, see that building over there? Let me guess, Dad, you worked on it. But I think it kind of goes with the community. People love when they build something in their community, they can point it out, and they can show their kids, I worked on that building.
Right.
In this case, I think nothing would be better from somebody to come from a community. They worked on a housing project. They then own that house. There's no better feeling than that in the world to me.
Right on. So what is your role then? I mean, mobilizing labor to make these projects get off the ground?
Mine would be probably twofold. I'm kind of the middleman, I guess you would say. So obviously we would do the labor component. We would do the outreach. We would bring people in, move people forward, find out the best fit. Our training component we would do as well, along with some other unions as well. But then also with the Richmond Capital part. And this is one of the things that I'm excited about. Our members all pay into a pension fund. There's nothing better to have that pension fund money go to Richmond Capital, them do a project in Michigan. We can tell our members, your pension money is being funded, this project, and we're getting a good return on that, and we're doing a good community benefit. It's a win-win for everyone.
Right.
Good for the state. As far as, like you said, retention. It's terrible to see all these kids graduate and just leave.
Right. And, in a lot of these complex problems that need to get solved, you do sometimes get friction and ego and credit and profit, and all that stuff kind of gets in the way. But having an aligned group of folks that understand that obviously everyone needs to win, but you got to have that core group of folks that are going to help get this thing off the ground. And that's basically what you put here today, Brent.
Absolutely. And this is what's exciting. And the fact that this is a local-based effort, that it's changing how we've looked at economics since the 1970s, and going back to this idea of this hyper-local model of creating capacity locally, and understanding that by having the investment that's coming from locally, having the workers locally, that it rebuilds and adds on those returns, that not just on the returns for the investors, but the returns for the community too. And that's the important part about this, is that over time, as we continue to build this, we're able to do and create more capacity at these local levels, creating more opportunities for workforce development, creating more opportunities for investment, creating more opportunities for people to have stable housing long term. And it's going to be incremental over time, but this is exciting because it's just rebooting what happened 100 years ago in the state, and going back to the models that made Michigan strong when it grew in the Industrial Revolution.
And Brent, if I can add on to that quickly, statistically over the years, we've sort of helped a number of organizations prove that when you have this kind of local investment, it creates a multiplier effect. Typically, you'll get a 2 to 3, sometimes 4 times direct investment from other entities that follow the pension fund investments. But that's just the beginning. After that, you'll see tons of indirect reinvestment in these markets, and the multiplier effect is actually astounding. So when you take those local resources, you reinvest them back in the community, they tend to be followed by other resources that come along with it, and before you know it, you've got an extraordinary ecosystem of really, really strong financial benefit. I took a quick look real quickly at sort of the institutions Michigan-wide that are the big opportunity players that could contribute to this kind of effort. And you've got an extraordinary list of whether they're tapped out any kind of pension funds, public pension funds, endowments, hospital funds, foundations, religious-based funds. It's about 140 in Michigan, north of $100 million in assets. And if you think about all of the investment that could come from modest contributions from any of those entities into this kind of effort, you can really accelerate the growth of Michigan substantially. The key is, and Alex said it, the key is to do it prudently so that you make sure you invest smartly, you protect the investors' interests, but you also do it with the notion of really helping the communities and reinvesting in your own economy. It's the best of all worlds. It really is.
So to set kind of more of the stage on the need for housing, I was having a conversation, Keith, with actually one of your counterparts around the state who earned a large employer, right? A site selection process happened. They won that bid. They're going to build, a couple million square foot facility, and they're going to employ about 2,000 people. And the person that's kind of sat in your chair for that municipality looked at me and just said, "This is great, but now we've got other problems we need to fill. We need to really manage the infrastructure of people, right? I mean, now that we've managed the infrastructure of this facility, we need housing, we need public transportation, we need childcare, we need, rural broadband, we need, like all these, say, the healthcare, the school districts need to know that there are probably going to be inbound population growth, that kind of stuff." To paint a little bit of a picture of the process for site selection, can you talk to us a little bit about how that works and what LEAP's your role is in that, and what kinds of things are these companies looking for in the site selection process?
Sure. So in the site selection world, LEAP is kind of at the tip of the spear for the Tri-County region in terms of investment attraction and working with the MEDC very closely. We do something like 100 site searches a year. So it's the last couple of years, it's been at a record-breaking clip of a couple a week. And especially the larger of those where they're talking about, more than 100 jobs, a lot of times more than 500 or more than 1,000 even. All the companies of that scale that are looking at a very significant investment into an operational footprint of some sort of project, a lot of times it's a manufacturing or headquarters type operation. they're almost always thinking deeper about the community in terms of not just like community planning, zoning, and to get the thing set up, but what's around them, right? A lot of times we're looking at labor force analysis within a 10-minute drive time, within a 20-minute drive time, within a half hour, an hour. So we're doing a lot around that because and there's been examples around the country where somebody announced something huge that's in the middle of nowhere, and then they really struggle with the workforce attraction. A lot of these companies want to be kind of the employer of choice. They want to offer good wages and benefits and everything to attract people. But it doesn't always work that way if you just like go put yourself on an island. So I think that's one of the things that's really compelling about our region is because we've had kind of, mediocre growth for 50 years, essentially. We haven't really had a lot of that growth into the more, we have a really nice network of interstates, and we have populated urban core and then suburbs around it. But there's a lot of room to grow beyond that, just from a pure land standpoint. We're not landlocked, right? We don't have like water bridge type issues like a lot of communities have. So in site selection, all those things kind of come into play. And time again, it's led to a site that we offer within the state of Michigan being the top pick for the state. And then, nationally, national runner-up, we've come in a number of times for semiconductor projects, for EV battery projects. And, our region is really hot in that perspective. And we won Altium, right? A $2.6 billion project and 1,700 jobs that we're helping them hire right now. And it's exactly that sort of issue that, sometimes you can make a deal and then it's like, what's next? And a lot of times housing and childcare, they really didn't enter the discussion even 3-4 years ago. But now, especially for these larger users, larger employers, they really want to talk about it on the front end, which is cool because we're able to bring Brent Forsberg right into that discussion with, a couple of prospects in the last 12 months we've done that with, that they want to understand about the housing plan. We have our childcare coalition that LEAP is leading for the region, which is also a kind of cool innovation that Michigan's had economic development at the tip of the spear with employers, childcare providers, and parents, figuring out how to improve capacity and access and affordability of childcare, and actually to get the community, the resources out to the communities. So that's a big piece too. Those are really the big two that we're chiefly involved in. Is housing and childcare are not just things we talk about the data. Like they want to understand the trajectory and how things are going to get better. Right? There's gaps today. How do we improve them functionally? Not just kind of here's the state of things. We hope it gets better. What's the plan? How are you going to do that?
Right. So to figure out the plan, you got to figure out where you are. And Brent, I know in your PhD studies and your knowledge of local economies, talk to us a little bit about the state. You mentioned the 1970s average age of housing, but what is the evidence that we need housing and what kind of housing and where do we need it? And can you just lay a little bit of foundation as to how bad the housing situation is?
Yeah. So, across the entire state right now, we're at least, we're building, I think, about 10,000 less a year of what we should be right now compared to other states with the job growth that's happening right now. And that's kind of a rough number, because it ebbs and it flows. But some of the things to really keep in mind is that almost 40% of the people living in the state of Michigan right now are at risk in their housing, transportation, and childcare. So we're just seeing our local housing wealth and the stability of the households in Michigan slowly eroding over time. And just every year, as we're coming through this inflation period right now, people are feeling that as we're seeing national reports about debt going up and household debt, and then also cost of energy, cost of money on the housing. So all of this pressure coming on is putting us where we're kind of tracking the wrong way right now. And this is one thing that the state did when it went around across all the regions and put this housing plan together, was asked, what are the local problems? And they put it together, and it's on MSHDA's website, so anybody can pull that and read that, which has the 37 goals and then the strategies that are in place for the housing. And one of the things that really struck me when I met Alex for the first time, and actually it was the second time we met, and he took me out to the training center. And they have this video out there that shows folks that have gone through the training at LIUNA and are working now out on the job site. And the first one or two was this young person stating, this got me so I could buy my house and my car's paid off, and talking about the economic stability of what the union labor training and getting the job did. And this is what we're looking at now, is that, okay, as we're building this up, it's no secret across the trades right now, and we are just woefully short of people that are in the trades and working. They either left during the downturn or even going through the training centers across the state right now, people are still leaving the state for other opportunities. So this is something that we have to reverse, and this is what we're working on together, is how do we create this opportunity and build this capacity in our workforce and make the economic argument with housing stability, and long-term finance growth to keep people here in Michigan, because that's what it is, right? I mean, people are leaving, and what we've seen in the research that I've done is you got GDP, you have housing affordability that are tied together. And that when the workforce hits a certain threshold, when it starts getting over about 30% of total housing costs, the workforce will move to a market to try to find other opportunities. And we've seen some of that happen in Michigan, where we've been affordable for years, starting 2016-17 especially, as we've seen that pressure on housing accelerated through COVID, when we saw a lot of our housing go to secondary housing for other areas, people buying it. That really just kind of accelerated that pressure. And that's what we're working on is, okay, we understand what the problems are. The state's done a great job with the housing plan to look at these, and now it's our job to come up with these strategies to fix it.
Got it.
One of the things we do as an investor too is when we look at a project in any location, we certainly look at the attributes of the product and the location, how it's going to be built, et cetera. But the other thing that's really, really important here is the team behind it. And Brent and Alex has sort of hit on this, but let me tell you, as we look at Michigan and we look at the opportunities that we've talked to these guys about, it is really, really impressive to see the work that's being done, the forward-thinking, the community-based structures, training that LIUNA and the labor organizations bring to the table. That means a very, very good investment for investors that are thinking about the future of their finances and where they want to take their money. And it's really, really central to the difference between success and not success. Having this effort, I'm going to say again, is such an important thing because it's built locally, it's resourced locally, and you're putting together all the appropriate pieces that really, really are necessary. And you're having these dialogues across sectors, whether it's with corporations or local communities or private enterprise, the labor unions, et cetera. It's such an important dialogue to have, and really means for us as an investor security in the investments we're making and success. It's really thrilling to be part of this kind of conversation.
That's great. And I love these conversations because while we have the Brent Forsberg in studio here today, Brent's always with us on the show as one of our sponsors. And I just want to let everyone know when it comes to creating commercial and residential spaces, there's no one I trust more than my friends at the Forsberg Real Estate Company. Brent Forsberg and his team take a holistic approach to create an environment that suits your needs while creating a foundation for a prosperous community. Since the 1950s, Forsberg has been a name to trust if you're looking to partner on a project, occupy a great space to live or work, or simply follow one of the great thought leaders of our state. And I mean that. Follow Brent Forsberg on LinkedIn in particular. You'll learn a ton. Reach out to my friends at Forsberg Real Estate Company by calling 517-349-9330 or check out their website at lansingrealestate.com. So again, thanks for all your support for the show, and I'm really excited about this conversation. So I think we've set the table that we need some housing, and it's a complex problem, but what are the barriers, right? I mean, I think a layperson might say, we need more housing. There are people that build houses, supply and demand, go build these houses and fix the problem. There should be money to be made, go fix the problem. So what are the problems that prevent us from having all the home builders build new subdivisions and fix this problem?
Well, we do have a lot of issues with the cost of money. Regulation right now is harder than it's ever been. But when we look at this, all of it's just kind of compounded over time. When we came out of that first, the Great Recession, a lot of those older home builders retired, and so we never really brought back that group that was building. And this is where right now what we're looking at, that okay, housing is getting really complicated to build, and this is where it's a great partnership with LIUNA, is understanding that we have to be able to change the entire process, which I think will help get housing back on track. And that's one of the things that I'm excited about working with Alex about is looking at the overall, how do we do it on site? And how do we work with the smaller builders that are there to create new opportunities at the local level? Because at the end of the day, housing is still very local. It's not like a true manufacturing plant that you can just go in and standardize, because each community puts it out a little bit different. This is where it's exciting, and working and bringing in local labor, and then also finding local builders to work with, that we're going to be able to kind of address it on both sides. So work on it from the side of how we address housing as a function from start to finish, but then also at the hyper-local level to meet those community needs.
Got it. And so, like you mentioned, so I mean, the cost of money, right? Interest rates are as high as they've been in a while, although historically they're really not too astronomical, right? But
we came out of a market that had adjusted.
Right. Well, we got used to.
Yeah. And then as the cost of everything came up, the market just can't adjust that fast to absorb that cost.
Right. But all the materials to build a home is through the roof, and that's everything. A friend of yours shared with me, it's like, when you're building a big project, there's usually one component that's elevated in pricing because of just circumstances.
Yeah.
He's like, in this particular environment, everything's elevated. It's labor, it's boards, it's plumbing, it's copper, it's wiring, it's everything that you put into a home is as high as it's ever been, which just economically doesn't make a project pencil. It's going to cost me $400,000 to build the home you want me to sell for $250,000.
Yeah. Well, Chris, we've seen a lot of projects where you can't get the material, even if you had the money to pay for the cost. You can't get it; it's not available, which creates another barrier to trying to do projects.
Right.
And I want to echo one point that Keith was talking about. I mean, the amazing part to me in Michigan, and I've been in Michigan since '75, but it used to be people would be excited to see $1 million project. I mean, we're seeing multiple $1 billion projects, and to me, it's just amazing the chance that we have to do things right.
Got it. So, in a summary, what is this Michigan plan? You talked about MSHDA has it on the website, 37, goals and objectives and all that kind of stuff. But in a nutshell, how does that change the needle, and how does that help you mobilize?
So they've put together their goals, which is looking at housing stability, and that's addressed many different ways. But then each local community is in the process right now of building out what that plan is. So our region is the Tri-County area, and across the entire state, I think there's 7 or 9 regions. I get confused with the economic regions sometimes. But so each region right now is going in, what is our needs locally? And that's what's happening. And those plans will be coming out starting this summer that will be tied in. And it's looking at what are the finance tools that are out there? What are things like the tax increment financing model that came out last year for workforce housing that the state can bring to the table? Looking at what are alternative funding mechanisms like we're talking about with LIUNA that can go and help across different regions of the states too. So, it's bringing all of these pieces together right now into this larger plan, and then each region will have its own set of goals underneath of that.
Got it. So that's a fine exercise, but we need action, right? And we kind of can't wait. I mean, again, who am I to say, right? You certainly don't want to be bold and do it wrong. And it's clear that Detroit's needs are going to be different than Battle Creek's, than Traverse City versus Alpena, right? I mean, they've all got different things going on, but even just the sniff test, I think the locals could probably tell you off the cuff. It's like, while we're building this formalized plan, we know we need this. And how do we get projects started, right? Yeah. Is that fair to say that?
Absolutely. And for me, this is why it's important with talking with Alex, and not to put you on the spot, but to bring up some of the issues that you see with that local labor, because it starts with this relationship, right? We got the housing problem, we got the people problem, and getting them to come together. And this is where I think it's important to understand that getting down to the individual person working on the job site, whatever that trade is, that, hey, by being part of this housing is going to be available for you, and there's going to be more opportunity in Michigan. So if it's all right, just talk a little bit about how you guys are handling it with the training center, because I think that's so important.
Sure. So laborers let's just say it's a starting craft. So a lot of people will start in the laborers, but once they get to learn where they're at, they understand there's millions of different opportunities you can go. We have people that work on pipelines all across the country. We have people that become superintendents. And I think the room for growth is great. And the way we see it, if we can take somebody from a community, right, and make them a construction worker to build a house, right? And we don't want to pigeonhole and saying that you're going to stick at that house. But once you've built that house, we're going to build a feeder system. You then could go into concrete. You can go to masonry. You can go to build roads. You could become a superintendent. But then we want to backfill with somebody else from the community and keep it growing. and just keep that investment going on and on and on, and then reinforcing that community engagement. When everybody in the community worked on the project, I mean, everybody's going to take care of it.
And is that momentum building from a workforce participation and more people getting into the trades? Because there seems to be 100 years worth of job security probably waiting for you if you get into this type of trade.
Yeah, right now, I mean, there's obviously everybody's busy, right? And the way we see it, there are people out there that have never considered doing construction. And I will say this, I know recently we've had a lot of people that graduate college. They look at the opportunities that are out there, and we have a lot of people that will come to us and say, I want to be a laborer. You guys got it going on. You got great health care. You got great pension. You have lots of opportunity for growth, and I want to be part of it. And I just love seeing young people get engaged in it and just excited to be part of the process.
That's the key to the plan.
I can add too. Just quickly, I can add from
Please.
my experience. One of the things that I think people miss in considering whether or not they would be part of a labor union like the LIUNA is that there's a longer-term opportunity here that can be exceptional. And I've seen time after time after time people go into the labor unions, build a career there, and they decide, you know what, I'm going to build my own company. And they'll go out and start their own construction-based company, working with LIUNA to provide the skilled personnel that they need in order to grow that business. And now all of a sudden you have a pipeline to the creation of new small business, which is in many ways the lifeblood of economic growth. So people, I think, sometimes think, well, gee, I can join the union and have a great career. But that also can lead to people creating new businesses. So I've got good friends that have started concrete companies, drywall companies, et cetera, that came straight out of the labor movement. And those are now some of the exceptional contractors that you really want to work with in the future because they've been so well trained and they have a real sense of how this business works very, very well. So it's a real career opportunity for people to think about, not just the immediacy of the job and the opportunity there, but the long-term opportunity to really own your own business.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that is the trick, is tying people emotionally back to the communities where they're at, helping them build the communities that they're within, so they want to put down roots and stay there. That allows the growth to occur. So we have on the one side, we have the very hyper-local level, working with the individual, creating the opportunity in the communities that they live, and then working with national connections on the financing to kind of bring both of these pieces back together over time. So for me, that's how we catalyze this plan and make it work across the state, is bringing in one person at a time that then becomes our workforce that grows, that then spins off all of these other opportunities moving forward.
Fantastic.
I would like to add one thing to Brent's comment, and this is something that I've witnessed probably over the last 20 years. You have a lot of entities that start training programs, right? And the problem I see, you can do all the training if you want, but at the end of the day, when you get done training, if that person doesn't have a job, there's no sense in even doing it. You have to get a job. You have to have an income. You have to learn the skills and apply them and be able to work in that profession, or else it means nothing. And I think that's one of the opportunities that's nice for us, because we can take a brand new person, through them through training, and we can place them with a contractor.
Got it. Well, so now the metaphoric and legitimate foundation is set for all of this to happen. I want to take a pause here and close out chapter 1 of this conversation. I encourage all my listeners to look for our next show, which will be part 2 of this conversation and how this all gets put together. We've been speaking with Brent Forsberg, Keith Lambert, Alex Zurek, and Mike Ibarra about the housing needs in Michigan and a new Michigan program to make this all happen. Stay tuned for our next episode of Michigan Reimagined, where we tackle part 2.